to the marquee session of the Apollo Tyres Sports Conclave. I am Digvijay Singh Deo, and a star-studded panel is going to join me to debate and discuss how to make India a sporting superpower. I'm actually glad that we are having this conversation in the aftermath of India's greatest ever showing at the Olympic Games as well as the Paralympic Games. Our first panelist is somebody who is perhaps India's most recognized sports person. He's a former captain of the Indian cricket team. He's the leading scorer in international cricket, and he's also a recipient of India's highest honor, the Bharat Ratna. Please give it up for Sachin Tendulkar. Okay, next up is Vita Dani. She's chairperson of the Ultimate Table Tennis. She's also co-owner of Chennai FC with Abhishek Bachchan and Mahendra Singh Dhoni. Okay, if you know your football, then I don't need to introduce Andy Cole. Andy joins us from across the high seas. Andy won 5 Premier League titles with Manchester United, and he also won the UEFA Champions League. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Neeraj Kanwar is the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Apollo Tyres, and he's also a massive sports enthusiast. Thank you, Neeraj, for joining us as well. Hemen Tseayo is Chief Strategy Officer at Manchester United, and we look forward to getting his perspective as an independent observer.
Hello, my pleasure to join you.
And finally, last but not the least, we have Abhishek Bachchan, who, as I mentioned, is a co-owner at Chennai FC. He also is the man behind the Jaipur Pink Panthers Kabaddi team. And Abhishek, I must add here that last night I was actually surfing through the net, and I came across the teaser for your latest film. I must say you aced that son of the soil look and the accent perfectly. Brilliant. When you have Sachin Tendulkar with you, you have to start with him. Sachin, over the course of your career, you achieved sporting greatness. But in your mind, what does a country need to do to be regarded as a sporting powerhouse?
For any country to be a sporting power, first of all, to have a sporting culture is really important. And I feel in India, we still love watching sport. We don't love playing sport. So that transformation is really important, but it has to happen at a grassroots level. So I would say, right at the grassroots level in schools, sport should be made compulsory. Children should play whichever sport they like to play. Eventually, what we are trying to achieve is a fitter and healthier India. And that has to happen from a grassroots level.
I'll get Neeraj in on this, because Neeraj, where do you stand on this? Does a country only need to perform at the Olympics, the Paralympics, and the World Cups in sports which are not part of these games to be regarded as a sporting house? As Sachin said, it's more about the sporting culture.
I think I agree, Diggy, with what Sachin is saying. It has to start from the grassroots, and he's picked up the education system has to allow our kids to become more sports oriented. Today, I find in India, it's very academic, and most of the time is spent in school on academics and not really focusing on sports. By achieving a medal in the Olympics is obviously the final aim, but to get the entire grassroots of the country, and as you know, a lot of our kids are in the rural cities, and we don't know there's a lot of hidden talent in those in the rural districts of our country. As private corporates, we need to do public partnerships with the government to try and get inroads into those rural markets, into those schools, and start that entire wave of sports in India. I think India has a huge potential, provided we channel our resources in the right direction.
Just listening to what Neeraj and Sachin had to say, Andy Cole, as we lay down the agenda, do give us a sort of a neutral perspective, because I read a lot of football clubs over in Europe actually identifying talent at the age of 5, 6, 7, as Sachin is saying. Is that the way to go if you are to become a sporting powerhouse?
Yeah, I would generally believe so. I think, obviously, when I started out playing football, he wasn't that young. So we was getting scouted from 10, 11, 13, but from 5, 6, 7, 8, that's when you talk about grassroots, that is grassroots, and if you're going to build anything, that's where it all starts from, grassroots. I understand academically as well, but for me personally, you have to have both. You can't rely on sport and then not do your academical work as well. You got to try marry them together. I think if you marry them together, you can get wherever you need to get. But everything does start from grassroots, and you got to build on that. And then once you build on that, naturally it becomes a lot stronger.
Okay, Neeraj also mentioned partnerships between the private sector as well as Indian sport. And on that note, I want to get in Vita Dani. I hope you don't mind me calling you Vita. I just want to ask you, and first I must congratulate you. As someone who covers sport, I must congratulate you because you went and backed a sport like table tennis instead of going after the big boys where you get more bang for a buck like cricket. How confident are you that with the right approach and the right backing that you and your team have given, that a medal in TT, which had always been thought of as it's impossible, is actually around the corner?
So thank you for the kind words, Diggy. I think what is most important is to be the dark horse in any sports, and your expectations are less. So when we started off with table tennis, we had 2 players in top 50. This was back in 2018. Today we have 12 players in top 50. This is 2022. And we have 21 players who are in top 100 in the world. So I think it's important that a country of billion people, I don't see a reason why we don't have enough talent. It's a question of banking the right talent, giving them the right support, and ensuring that they have whatever they need to excel in the sport. And that's exactly what we have done in table tennis. The same thing has happened even in football. And Abhishek will agree over here that we have really tried hard to do our grassroots. We have almost 60,000 children now in Tamil Nadu who are part of our grassroots program.
I'm going to bring Abhishek Bachchan in. And Abhishek, I'll give you a personal example because I always find these personal examples work very well. I grew up hooked onto sport because I sat with my father and I used to watch hockey matches being played at the Olympics or at the Asian Games. Over the last few days, my son, he's 10 years old, he was hooked watching Kabaddi. I think that's a great example for other sports, that go out there, put your sport out there, market it well, get on TV, and your sport is going to grow.
I similarly grew up and watching sports sitting beside my father. And I'm very happy to say that today my daughter sits besides me when we're watching football or watching Kabaddi or watching cricket. And I think that's part of how we inculcate the next generation into a sporting infrastructure. I have to agree with what Vita, Mr. Cole, Neeraj and Sachin also said. It's a matter of grassroots levels. I think the one thing we should not beat ourselves up too much about is these are all systems and processes which are going to take time. We have to understand that apart from the wonderful infrastructure and systems that cricket has in place, and the BCCI does a fantastic job, I think the corporate world really got involved in sports in 2007 and 8, especially with the advent of the IPL. That's when privatized leagues really took off in India. After the IPL, we had the Pro Kabaddi League, we had the Indian Super League, and we've had several other sports that have had private leagues that have come up. And that is how you start interest in any sort of sport. Plus with a mandate to all the teams, like, for example, in the ISL that we have, to have a grassroots program when you identify the talent very young and build them up through the system and hope that they break through. You give them examples as the great Mr. Tendulkar sitting on this panel and as Mr. Cole. They're both icons of their sports and people that we've admired and looked up to and aspired to be like, although we've always known that we possibly will never have their talent set, but we still try. We build those heroes, they perform and deliver on their talent, and that entire thought process takes its time. I think India, if you talk about privatized leagues and professional leagues in different sports, is just over a decade old. If you look at just the not just the Premiership, but if you look at, say, English football, which I believe is possibly the highest level of football in the world for any league, on a league level, that we've been around the English Football League has been around for over 100 years. They've had systems in places, and they do a wonderful job of marketing it worldwide. And I think, as reluctantly being a Chelsea fan, I can say that I think United has done a great job of putting the word of football out there.
I think another important factor was Abhinav Bindra winning the gold at the Olympics. Till then, it was more of, are we good enough to get over there? But Hemen, just getting you in as well from the outside, India won a gold medal at these Olympic Games in Tokyo. There was a silver, there were 4 bronze medals as well, and India were 48th on the tally. Many countries, much smaller, were way ahead. But you've heard what the panel has to say. As an independent observer of Indian sport, where do you think India stands in terms of the journey towards being a powerhouse at the moment?
Thank you very much. And if I may, I'm disappointed to hear that Abhishek is unfortunately a Chelsea fan, but you can't have everything right. So there you go. In terms of the Olympics, it's a great one because, frankly, I'm a huge Olympics fan. I love all sorts of sport, and I think India's been fascinating to see. I mean, I first kind of was aware of obviously cricket first and Sachin from India, but when watching the Olympics, hockey is what kind of people would associate typically with India, and it didn't escape many of us to see that actually in terms of the progress, particularly over the last 20 years. So if I kind of look back and see where India were in 2000 in the Olympics in Sydney, I think it was just 1 medal.
Yes.
It was a bronze.
Yeah.
Then kind of 20 years later, and particularly when you're looking at the Olympics, sort of the arc of the time it takes to develop does take, to pick up on the patience point, a significant amount of time. So 7 medals, 1 gold, I think it was 2 silvers, as you say, and then the bronzes. But for me, in 6 different sports. And very often people sort of associate certain sports with India and have predispositions about physiques, etc. But as Vita said, with 1 billion people, you have people who could be world class at pretty much everything. It's about finding that, and the links are there. To pick up on Sachin's point, it's not even just kind of those 7 areas where the medals were won, but if you look at, I think the volume, it was the highest number of athletes that you've ever sent to an Olympics. Again, if you look back over the last 20 years, I think it was almost double in 20 years, which is remarkable. If you increase the participation at the base and you have more people coming through, and you mentioned it, celebrating those people, the results then come. You do need to focus your efforts in terms of getting kind of the medals, but ensuring that actually you celebrate everybody who goes to participate.
Yes, it is happening. And there was one more interesting aspect which sort of, emerged from the team that went to the Tokyo Olympics. It was one of our youngest. There were 18, 19-year-old kids going to the Olympics, their first Olympics. And that's a great sign that the young sports person of today sort of has that self-belief to go on and represent the country. And that's something which will sort of benefit India in the next 3 years at Paris. I'm going to get Sachin back because all this talk about the Olympics, you follow the Olympics very closely. You mentioned Neeraj Chopra. You were also there at the Rio Games, and also PV Sindhu ended up winning a medal there, ended up winning a medal here at Tokyo as well, becoming the first Indian woman to win 2 medals. But Sachin, does that convince you? Does this convince you that India is on the right path? That whatever's happening across sport, this is the right path. And as Abhishek said, it's only about having patience.
India is on the right path. There is no doubt about it. And like Abhishek said, that it's going to take time and we need to be patient. But that doesn't mean that we wait for things to happen. We also need to keep moving forward and try and explore as many things as possible. I mean, the way our athletes performed in the Olympics last year was heartening to see. It was superb. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, there were some incredible performances. I mean, this was our best performance in all the Olympics. We won 7 medals, but again, I'd like to reiterate that there were guys who did not bring the medal back, but the way they played, the way they performed, just to name a few, Deepak was there in wrestling, then Aditi Ashok. Now that even I play a bit of golf, I was following all those things. It was a treat to watch. From our hockey team winning a bronze medal, we also saw women were not that behind. I mean, they did not win the medal, but surely I can say that they won millions of hearts. Their energy and enthusiasm was just something. And that is what I'm trying to say, that, results are not going to happen overnight. One has to follow the process and results will follow them. This is a reflection of our infrastructure getting better. Also, it is more organized. It is more methodical. People are supporting various sports. They are fully committed to what they want to achieve. And for that, it's going to be some time away, but there is light at the end of the tunnel for sure. There is no doubt about it.
Vita, let's get you back in. Let's look at corporate involvement in sport today. Now, I remember 2005. At that point of time, parents wanted their children to be like Sachin Tendulkar. And no disrespect to Sachin, but today, you have much more role models. Parents want their kids to be like Sania Mirza, like a Saina Nehwal, like a Mirabai Chanu, or even a Neeraj Chopra. Does that tell you that as you get more and more success on the sporting pitch, more and more corporate support will follow? You all have sort of laid the platform, and it's time now for those results to come forward. And those who were sort of sitting on the fence, they're now ready to come forward and support sport.
I don't think there is any dearth of money coming in now. But what is important is to also ensure that we have the right system in place. We have to have the pyramid whereby I think if we follow something like an NCAA, which is the National Collegiate Athletic Association model of USA, I think it does really well because it allows students to pursue sports and education at the highest level. So both coexist. And actually, people can make a career out of it. So if we target schools, then, we are looking at 5 to 10, schools of 5 to 10,000 students. They become like a laboratory for talent, So from grassroots, you go down to schools, to university. And then, of course, we are talking about the leagues. And when you're talking at leagues, it's, of course, talent at the highest level. But more than that, you're looking at eyeballs, you're looking at broadcast, you're looking at youngsters. If you look at India, it's a young country with an average age of about 35. So you're looking at an age of 35 that's going to be a consumer, age of 35 that's going to be a spender, age of 35 that is actually going to call the shots because they have the buying power. So how do you engage them? How do you keep them entertained? Those things are going to be very critical. And that's where the leagues are going to play a very important role over here.
I need to get Andy Cole back here because Vita spoke about India being a very young country. A lot of a lot of people under 35, including kids. But what that also brings with it is a lot of self-belief. You've seen self-belief just around you in football. Cristiano Ronaldo had the self-belief that he wanted to be the best player in the world, and he would go and he would work his socks off. And that's what we are seeing in Indian sport today. The young kid going out there in 17, 18 to compete at the Olympics thinks that he can beat the best in the world.
Yeah, of course it's essential. We say in football in terms, if you don't believe in yourself, who else is going to believe in you? Because you have to believe in yourself. It doesn't matter what line of work you do. Ultimately, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your qualities to do whatever you need to do. So in footballing terms, when you mention Ronaldo there, confidence in football is everything. You're playing in front of 70,000 people at Old Trafford. You're playing in front of 1 million of people. If you don't believe in yourself, how can you bring your best to that football pitch, or how can you bring your best to whoever your teammates, your management, whoever's around you? So you have to believe in yourself, because that's where it starts. It starts from you.
And also on that question of confidence, Abhishek, at the beginning you spoke about the leagues, and I'll just sort of give you a personal example. When I started out covering sport very early, 2001, 2002, Indian hockey was sort of down in the dumps, and India had a great tradition of hockey, as Hemen mentioned, 8 gold medals, but then it stopped, and then the self-doubt creeped in. And then you had the Hockey India League, where the players sort of started playing the same Australian or Spanish players or the Argentinians who they were scared of when they were playing, and that would lead to mistakes and conceding a goal in the last 2 or 3 minutes. But then all of that changed when they realized that, okay, they may be a bit bigger than me, but I have better skill sets. Do you see that self-confidence today in all the sports persons you interact with?
The Kabaddi boys, I mean, you have to understand, Kabaddi as a sport, India was already ranked #1. They have that attitude when it comes to other sports. But I see it in the boys, in the lads when they play football. I mean, in Chennai and our initial couple of seasons where we had some wonderful legends come in. We had Marco Materazzi as our manager. You had Alessandro Nesta as one of our defenders. You had Elano Bloomer. And, you know, when our boys got to play with world-class talent like that, they got to imbibe. And you could actually see the body language of players like JJ and Anirudh Thapa change over the season, and see that gate open up a bit, and see the confidence in their walk, the fact that they want the ball. So, you know, these leagues are going to change a mindset, and I'm happy that it's happening.
Okay, Hemen, you know, at the beginning, Neeraj spoke about the focus in India being a lot on academics, but do you think that there's also the marketing side of it, that ultimately, once a champion, as Sachin said, is celebrated, then parents start also looking at sport as a very viable career option?
I think, yes, it's useful that their parent kind of is aware that they can make a career out of this, and this could help look after them. But I think Andy made this point, and I'd echo it and double down here, in that the academics and the sport is important, because I think something that we're all very aware of is only a very small percentage of people actually make it all the way through, but participating in sport is an end in itself.
But Neeraj, talking about corporate investment in sport, we've seen a lot of investment in sport at the top level with the top level athlete. The government has the TOPS program and OPEX and whatever you want to call it. But how important is it that the money goes all the way down to the grassroots, which is, again, a topic we were discussing at the start?
You know, Diggy, I've been listening to everyone, and I'm a clear believer of sports, and I love what Sachin has done in his life and what he's continuing to do. And what Hemen said, it's a marketing of an end-to-end system of the country. Today, if you see, we have over 180 engineering colleges in India, because most parents want our kids to become engineers. And now the wave has become software engineers because of startups, because there's huge valuations there. Where are our colleges for sports? Do we have public-private partnerships where people are coming up with academies for sports? And the answer is, I don't even know of any. Maybe there are a handful in India. So I'm talking about the entire DNA, the entire infrastructure of the country changing. The mindset of the country has to change if we want a big wave of the country going into sports. And a country like India, which has 1.3 billion people, can really do it, because once we focus on something, we really go after it. That's the DNA of India.
Yes, let's move on from engineering to engineering sporting success. I think that's the nice way of summing it up. I need to wrap this. Thank you so much for your time, for your insights. Let's just keep this conclave and save it, and let's revisit this in 10 years, and let's see whatever we spoke, did that sort of materialize? Because I get a feeling, and there are far better experts here on screen, but just my feeling from covering sport is Indian sport is waiting to explode. Will it happen in Paris 2024? Will it happen in Los Angeles? I'm not sure of that. But I do remember that in 2008, the Indian hockey team didn't qualify for the Olympics. And we kept asking ourselves, will India ever get to an Olympic podium in hockey in our lifetime? We thought that won't happen, but we were proved wrong. On that note, Sachin Tendulkar, Abhishek Bachchan, Vita Dani, Neeraj Kanwar, thank you so much. Also to Hemen, to Andy Cole, and everyone out there who was listening, Abhishek Bachchan as well, and all our audience who've been patiently listening to some of the wisest minds in sport, not just Indian sport. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting this, and hopefully Indian sport can not just grow and leap and bounce, but it can actually fly, it can actually soar. Thank you so much.